Welcome to CIT Today, a podcast that dives into vital mental health topics impacting our community. Join us as members of the Anne Arundel County Police Department's Crisis Intervention Team discuss the crisis response system of care. This system provides community members experiencing a crisis with supportive assistance and connections to resources. Crisis response offers support and assistance to those with substance abuse and mental health challenges. One goal is to focus on redirecting people from the criminal justice system to the behavioral health care system. Come with us as we explore these challenging situations facing families and communities everywhere.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Steve Thomas. I'm joined alongside my co-host, Jen Corbin. Today on the show, we're excited to have Tristyn. Tristyn called for help for a friend who was in crisis. Tristyn, thank you for joining us and welcome to CIT Today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you for having me. My name is Tristyn, and I graduated high school a year ago, and now I attend community college studying environmental science. I was the president of my school's SAD chapter for my final 2 years in high school, and I've been a part of SAD since I was in 7th grade.
Can you tell everybody a little bit about what SAD stands for?
SAD stands for Students Against Destructive Decisions. It was originally Students Against Drunk Driving, but we decided that we wanted it to be more broad and cover more topics like mental health, substance abuse. We still cover drunk driving. We do things such as Prom Promise and Red Ribbon Week.
Awesome. Thank you.
So, Tristyn, today we're here because you share your story of calling for help for a friend. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so back on December 4th, 2021, I received text messages from a close friend saying things like, "Shine bright for me when I'm gone." She was texting other ones of my close friends, telling them to check up on me when she was gone. And they were worrying text messages, so I tried to get in contact with her, and she still just seemed a little bit off. We stayed on the phone for hours. I remember trying to get her to look at prom dresses because I thought that talking about prom in the future and planning stuff like that might help her a little bit, but I didn't know that by the time I had gotten a hold of her on the phone, she had already taken some pills, and there was nothing I could do at that point. It was out of my hands. And I didn't know this until 2 weeks after my story, and I'll talk about that later, but we fell asleep on the phone. I thought everything was okay. I woke up and I went to church the next morning, Sunday morning, December 5th, and I remember sitting in church and saying, if she doesn't answer me by 12 o'clock, that means I have to call for help. And I got out of church at 11:30, and I told my dad what happened, and she still hadn't answered. And so he said, "You need to call 911. I said, "I can't call 911. I can't do that." I knew what crisis response was. I had already worked with you guys. I knew that that was the thing I had to do, but I was so scared I was overreacting, and I was so scared she would be mad at me. I was so scared she would get in trouble with her parents, or I would get in trouble with her parents. I didn't know what was going to happen. And eventually my dad was like, "We need to call. I'll help you call." And that was my biggest support system through all of this, is knowing that they were helping me call. And we called, and they asked me what her address was, and I didn't know, so we got up and we drove to her house, and we sat outside her house to see if we could see anything going on, and we couldn't, so I told them her address. I left, and they went to her house, and I heard nothing for 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, I get a text message, and she says, "I'm okay, I love you, and I'll see you in school." And I think that saved me in a lot of ways too. It might have saved her, but knowing that I have the power to help somebody and they're not going to be mad at me afterwards, and knowing that our county has one of the best support systems out there for people that are struggling is really important.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you got to the point of knowing that you needed to call? Like, you talk about knowing about crisis response and all, but there was a long process through that, right? On the 4th into the 5th. What made you finally get to that point, and where did what you know come into play?
I think it was more the better safe than sorry, because I knew she wasn't acting right, and you know your friends better than anyone. You know your friends better than their parents know them sometimes. So being that person that they go to, if somebody's saying something, they mean it. On whatever level it might be, they should have help. And crisis response can give them any level of care that they need, or attach them to any level of care that they might need. So in my head, I said, I know she doesn't have a good support system at home at this time. Maybe that could change if they were involved. So even if it wasn't an emergency, they could help her get the resources that she'd been needing for years. And I know she had been needing it for years because she had told me that she needed it and didn't know what else to do. So I would just rather be safe than sorry and have a friend not like me for a short period of time than lose somebody in our community and somebody that I care about so much.
Yeah, and I heard you say that there were other people that were texted, but yet nobody else called.
Nobody else called, and my parents tell me a lot of the time that they think she told me because she knew I would call, and she knew that she didn't actually want to feel this way, and she didn't actually want to go through with it, but she didn't know how else to get help. And they said she wouldn't have told you if she didn't want help.
And the reason I bring up the friends is because you and I have had a lot of conversations and a lot of presentations we've done at like middle schools and high schools. It's not that they don't care. It's that they had the same mindset as you, is that you guys are like, as a friend, are going to help and you're going to be the ones that carry the weight. And it's really cool to hear you talk about that's a weight you can only carry for so long before you kind of have to tell an adult and get someone the help they need. It's not that they cared any less. It's just that everybody gets in the mindset of we can just do that. We can be the person who helps. And
A kid can only do so much for another kid. And yes, it's great to have a good support system, and having good friendships is so important for mental health and recovery. But you have to have an adult or a person that's educated or somebody that knows exactly what to do to be in that situation as well and know what's going on. Even if they're not your number one, they need to know what's going on.
Wow. That's awesome, because that's what we're trying to get out here, is to say there's a point in time where professionals need to jump on board and help, and you can still be supportive. How did you feel those 2 weeks when you didn't know what had happened or what was going on?
I was losing my mind. I remember going to my school counselor every single day saying, "Did you get an email? Do you know anything about her?" I would text the crisis response guy that gave me his phone number. I would be like, "Please tell me, is she okay? Is she okay?" And all they just kept saying was, "It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. You did the right thing." And I was like, "Is she going to hate me?" And they said, "No, she's not going to hate you. And if she does, wouldn't you rather her be alive and hate you than you have to be at her funeral?" And I was like, "Yes." And again, these whole 2 weeks, I didn't know that she had taken pills and overdosed. I didn't know any of this. I just knew that they went to her house and they said she was going to be okay, and that's all you have to go on. But in the end, it's worth it because she was getting the help that she needed.
I think at this point we should bring on our special guest for today. Tristyn, do you want to introduce her?
We have my friend Brie here today, the one that I called on.
Hi, I'm Brie. That was, yep.
Was that hard to hear?
Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate you being here today and kind of sharing so that we can help others. Can you tell us a little bit, listening to that story from your friend, can you tell it from your side now?
I can. I think without her even knowing, she kind of hit the nail on the head with what I was trying to do without realizing it. Looking back on it, I now realize that I did reach out to her because it was kind of my final, nothing I've done so far has worked. And I think this is what I need to reach out to try and get what I need. And
so you knew she was that one person that would be there for you when you reached out.
Yeah. And then also, once I was admitted into the behavioral health unit, I was not able to contact anybody at all but my parents. And that kind of made it really difficult on me to be in there because all I wanted to do was tell Tristyn that I was okay, because I was so scared that she thought I hated her when I didn't. I loved her more than ever.
I want to jump in real quick and say they did not tell her that I was the one that called. They're not going to tell that you're the one that calls. For anybody listening out there, if you're worried about that, she just knew because I was the only one that she told that would have done that, and that knew that much about her to be able to get her help and to know where she lived and, all of that sort of thing. They did not and have not to this day told her that I was the one.
Right.
Yeah, that's good to clarify because that's exactly it. It stays kind of confidential. And so that's also why people couldn't tell you how she was
Mhm.
doing. I think that's a real important part. I think
Yeah.
2 and 2 is you were worried, one, because it sounds like that night before you guys were having a conversation and you were her kind of solid ground during that overnight time. Can you talk a little bit about leading up to that and the feelings that you had and the text that you sent out? And
Right. So, one thing that I've been thinking about lately that has to do with mental health is that not a lot of people realize people with mental health, and especially people who are suicidal, they can get into a mindset that controls over them and they can't think clearly. Like, you start having the thoughts of wanting to harm yourself, and once you like get to that point of, yeah, I really want to harm myself, that's all that you can think about. You completely forget about all the skills you've learned. You just can't think
It's an
right.
obsessive thought once it gets to that point, and no amount of logic
Right.
can help it, and that's why we need to reach out to professionals that can get you out of the situation that you're in.
Right. So like I was in that spot and I just that's I knew that I didn't have to do it. And it hurt me that I did, but looking back, the mindset I was in was this is the only thing that can happen now. Which is why I think it's actually really important to take to to take in those skills that you learn when like from therapy groups, because the best thing you can do when you're having like a really overwhelming emotion of any kind is to step away and give yourself a break, like some mindfulness, anything, because getting into that thought process, it's not healthy.
I've learned that making these skills a habit in your everyday life, even when you're doing good, still doing things like taking your vitamins, working out, keeping a good friend group, keeping communication open in your household as much as your situation allows, even while you're doing good, is so important because it becomes a habit and then it's easier to do it when you slip into doing bad. Because things do come in fluctuations. It's also important to note you don't have to be doing terrible to get help. It's okay to get help when you start to feel those things and you're like, oh my goodness, maybe I'm not going to be able to handle this in a week or two if something else happens. Don't let yourself get to the breaking point.
Really, what I hear you talk about is prevention of
Mhm.
what can we do to prepare for the future.
And obviously, you can prevent things as much as you want, and it's still going to happen because we're human and we have so many stressors in our life and we have technology. And nobody's saying that you have to be good all the time and that every measure is going to work before you get bad. It's also good to have emergency plans in place for when you do get bad and know that you can come back from that.
So one of the things, as you're saying that, it reminds me of something that Jen talks about of having everyone needs to have 3 people they
I
can
was
call
just thinking about that. I was
when
just thinking we talk about that. Yeah.
so we think a lot alike. But having 3 people to call for that when you need help. Think of the same 3 people you're going to call when something really good happens, that you have 3 people to call when you're in crisis or you know you need help. And the key should be that there needs to be one adult. And with that, when you reached out and then Tristyn did have the help of her parents, really so that we have a positive outcome.
And I think it's important to share what you guys are talking about today is moving towards that, right? I hear you guys saying 1 minute you're okay and then 1 minute you're not. One of the things I know I say a lot when we're out talking to students is there's the good, then there's the bad, then there's the good, and then regulating that. And what I'm hearing you guys say is there's ways around that. And can you guys share a little bit about how you do that in your day-to-day lives now? I mean, there's stress every day. I hear you saying that as you guys are talking. What coping skills have you guys come up with?
Well, one thing I learned that the very first step that you need is to accept that you need the help and say that you want the help and that you want to get better. And then from there, you kind of just work with yourself, like what brings my mind off things. For me, it's diamond paintings.
Wow. Okay.
And then that kind of just like it calms me. Listening to music maybe. But just kind of mindfulness, doing little puzzles, kind of just calming yourself a little bit, realizing yourself, and then kind of setting boundaries for yourself so that you can figure out how to prevent things in the future. Like lately, I just quit my job not too long ago because I knew that if I kept going with my job, I would get super stressed out because of school. And I would get into a groove again because I was so stressed out. So I stopped myself. I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do to prevent it because this is going to be my boundary.
What great self-awareness to do that. I mean, I just can't praise you enough for listening to you say that. Sometimes it's hard. People don't walk away from the things that they know are going to put them in a place that's not good. And I think you being able to walk that walk and talk the talk, right? So you're not just saying, hey, we have to have good boundary. We need to know when we're doing it, but to actually do it, that's really cool. So that's proud of you.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about after Tristyn called for help, what you remember happening?
Well, I had always thought it was like 9:00 in the morning because when crisis had apparently come, my mom came upstairs and woke me up. And like, you know how when you're sleeping so well, you like jump awake? I jumped like so much because like I was in a very deep sleep.
Yeah.
And I thought it was like 8, 9:00 in the morning. Now to find out maybe like a month ago that it was actually like in the afternoon. But they came, they sat me down in my living room and they were like, so what happened last night? And I kind of just broke down in tears and like just spilled because like I knew,
This is your one shot.
yeah, this is, yeah, my one shot. And so I told them, they were like, okay, well, we're going to have to go get you evaluated. And then they took me to go get evaluated. My mother came and we kind of waited in the hospital for a little while. And then they evaluated me. They said, okay, I think you should go into an inpatient and get some, like, help regulate your medicine, help you learn some skills, get you back to a clear mind. And, yeah, I did that. But the crazy thing also is that, while I was there, I was having some health issues because of all the medicine that I had taken. And I could not keep food or water down at all. If I had drank anything, 20 minutes later, it'd be coming up. So it's actually kind of crazy to think that if she hadn't called, I would have been dead either way because I was so, by the time they had taken me down to pediatrics, I was like so dehydrated. It's not even fun.
Yeah. How does it feel to hear her say that?
I mean, this is the first time that we've told the story, I think, together. She's heard me say it once or twice, but not around anybody, not to anybody. And I've never heard her side of it, so it's kind of crazy to think that we're both sitting here doing this.
And we really appreciate it. And I want to thank you because how many people you're helping, that as people are listening, they're learning that it's okay to ask for help, and as well as it's okay to reach out and get your friend help and be that person that someone can count on, knowing that you'll be the one to help them.
I also want to say you don't have to be perfect to help other people or to help yourself. I've never opened up about this, but I myself struggle with a personality disorder that causes me to have high highs and low lows. And, some weeks I can't do it, and some weeks I'm doing great. And that's why I do this, because I've been struggling with this for years, and I don't think a single person in my everyday life really knows. But knowing that I know what other people are feeling makes me be able to help them more. So you don't have to be perfect or healed or anything to do better or to help other people. And I remember she told me one time, I was ranting to her. I was like, it's so hard this week. I don't know what to do. And she was like, people like us, people that struggle, have to be in touch with themselves. And you might see that as, I have to work so hard for the rest of my life. But really, you know yourself so well, and you have the power over yourself like no other person does. As soon as you realize that and you take control of that part of your mind, of feeling like you're out of control, I think that's when it all switched for me. And I was like, you know what? This makes me more powerful. Because look at what I've had to get over. And look at what I have to know about myself to be okay.
So in turn, you helped your friend back.
Right, I did. Actually, after I got out of the hospital, I had realized, you know what? I had always been into like computer stuff, coding, technology, but I realized maybe I'm more for the job of social work. I want to help other people. I want to help counsel, therapy, just be by their side, help them out. And then I realized like it's things like what I did with Tristyn I've always done in my life, and it just shows me even more that it's what's for me.
And I think you guys are sharing a really important message. How many people do you really think out there are perfect?
Right.
Right? Not really. And we know that part of it is, and I love what you just said about it's not, you don't have to be perfect to help somebody. You don't, you just got to be there for them. Listen and know when to get help.
And you don't have to be perfect to be okay. And you don't have to think that you have to be okay all the time to be a certain person. Like, even the strongest people in the world aren't always okay. And that makes them the strongest people.
But what I'm hearing you talk about is both of you have what we call post-traumatic growth, that you are now stronger than ever because you're taking care of yourselves. You have self-awareness. And I don't know if it's more important or not, but what you're doing to help the community is really, and I really truly appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So talk a little bit about SAD and how maybe any young person who may be listening to this podcast, how they can get involved in their schools. I know you were a big part of the SAD program, and I think that's a really good starting point for people who may be interested in helping others.
For me, I joined because my parents were in the SAD program, like they ran it at the school that I went to. So I kind of just got brought right in, and I loved it so much. You build such a strong community. I think the first step in getting involved is definitely look for your school's SAD chapter. If they don't have one, find a teacher that wants to lead it. There's so many resources online that you don't have to create anything yourself. There's Red Ribbon Week flyers. There's every event that you could think of out there. All you have to do is put it in place in your school or wherever you might be. It's just a good support system to have. I know our SAD students, a lot of them are also peer mentors, and they're helping with Prom Promise, and they're helping run prom safely. It's just a very good overlook of everything that you could do. It doesn't have to be specific. Like, you can change it to fit your school and your needs of your community. You can do community events, you can do school events, whatever you want. But I think that having a SAD chapter in the school is so important.
Awesome.
Well, I was kind of in and out of SAD for a little while, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna get too much into it, but I was not the healthiest with substances. And I realize now that was definitely not a good mix with my mental health at all, which people say, but people don't realize how much it actually affects them until they're not doing it anymore.
It's an immediate release, so it feels good when you're doing it. And then as soon as you get off of it, you can heal so much better because you can heal deep down and not just surface level.
But it's amazing how many people feel the same way you do and don't have the self-awareness to ask for help.
And it doesn't come easy. I mean, it's taken us years to get here. And even with how involved we both were, it's still, when it's right in front of your face, you don't see it and you don't realize it within yourself. And maybe you do, and you're still like, I don't want to get help. For me, I was terrified of what life would be like if I got better because I'm so used to living in a certain way. And it's a comfort. It is to know what every day is going to be and to not worry about if I'm happy, if I'm going to get sad again. But it really is worth it to get better. And when you have the resources that our county has for kids, for teens, for adults even, it's all right there. So use it and use it all the time if you have to.
Yeah, and just a reminder, everybody, the warm line is 24/7, and we've now got 988. So there's a lot of options to get help for people to get help that need it.
I have actually used that number maybe once or twice. I don't think anybody knows that I've used it before, but I have. It was really nice. I called one time, I believe, and I texted one time.
Okay.
I've also used it.
Yeah. It was really nice. It was another way for me to kind of get into my regulated calmness mindset because I was talking. I was speaking about it. And yeah, I just saying it kind of helped me.
Yeah, and I think that people don't realize, even if you're in therapy, it's at a scheduled time, and that's not always the time when you need to talk to someone. I mean, it's always still helpful to get through, and I always say put it out there. But if there's a time you're struggling, to know that there are numbers out there that people can reach out and talk in between those times to get the help they need, even if it's just someone to listen on the other line.
It's also good if you don't have the third person being an adult for your 3 go-to people. You can always use those resources as you're an adult in an emergency. It is good to have a consistent one, but if you are in an emergency and you just need to talk, but you don't want to talk to somebody in your everyday life that could know stuff about you, that's a good number because I believe it's anonymous. You can clarify that.
It is. I will clarify. You can call in and just chat. If you don't want to give your name, you don't have to. You just can sit and talk to someone until you're feeling better. And if it gets to a point that you're not, we'll send somebody out to help you. So, there's definitely resources out there.
But it's also the resource to call to get someone help. When you may not want to, it may not want to be known that you're the one calling, but you can give that information to get a friend help.
Also, if you're the friend that wants to help somebody and you don't know what to do and you need resources to help them, call.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually just told somebody lately to call Crisis because they had said, I need some resources. I don't know what to do. I was like, the best thing you can do for you and your friend is to call Crisis. And
they can give you any level of help that you may need.
So that brings us to the end of this episode. A special thanks to Tristyn and Brie for joining us during that riveting discussion of Anne Arundel County's crisis response system. We hope today's episode provided some critical information that may help you or a loved one.
We would like to take a moment to thank our listeners for joining us. If you or a loved one are experiencing a crisis, please contact the Anne Arundel County Crisis Response Warm Line at 410-768-5522. This number is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And remember, your actions may save a life. CIT Today was created by Steve Thomas and Jen Corbin. It was produced and recorded by Rich Herrard, researched, written, and edited by Justin Mulcahy and Steve Thomas. CIT Today is a product of the Anne Arundel County Police Department.